Good evening, good night, good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are in the world. You have just seen the mighty Niarco winning the Grand Prix de Paris at Longchamp in 1938. Niarco, unbeaten, was bred and owned by Senatore Federico Tesio and Marchese Mario Incisa della Rocchetta under the banner of Razza d'Ormello Giatta. When Niarco went to stud, I have to say that he completely changed the world of thoroughbred. Bear in mind that nowadays, every day, wherever there is a race for thoroughbred, at least 90% of the horses carry Niarco blood. And this is absolutely phenomenal achievement. This evening, we have a special guest from Scotland, or I should say, connected with from his private training center in Middleham Moor in the North Yorkshire. And this gentleman is Mark Johnston. Mark, welcome to the program.
Hi, good to be here.
Mark Johnston, is a special guest for the simple reason that he used to be a trainer. Now he's retired, becoming assistant to his son. But Mark Johnston has always said, trying all the time. That is what you say, always trying. And I have to say that, of course, always trying, because he won as a trainer over 5,000 races, which is another phenomenal achievement. Of course, without trying all the time, it would have been impossible to achieve that result. But Mark Johnston is a guy who has a lot of activities. For instance, he's a pilot of his own aeroplanes when he goes racing. He's breed with his wife, Deirdre, is breeding and owning show jumping horses and the 3-day event horses. One of them, ridden and trained by Tom McEwen, the son of the vet, he won the gold medal this year in Paris for the team. So he's a guy really of a a lot of activities. And last but not least, he's also a shareholder in a company which is running the Lifford Greyhound Stadium in Ireland, very close to the border with Northern Ireland, because Mark has always been involved also in Greyhound. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. Well, originally when I was at school and then during my years at university, I raced whippets, but I always loved greyhound racing from a very early age. I used to go greyhound racing in Glasgow with my father. Always loved the dogs, and as I say, raced whippets through my teens and university years, and then got back into greyhounds. Had 3 dogs, which I trained myself from 2012 through to or from 2011 or 12 through to 2014. So that was great fun as well. And yeah, I don't get an opportunity to go greyhound racing very much, but I think it's a fantastic sport.
Anyway, Lifford has a special feature because there is a tote working there, and the takeout for every kind of pet is only 10%. This was the idea of Harry Findlay, that is more or less is involved in running this place. And talking about the tote, in the last 3 days, there was the Whirlpool at York, and the betting turnover, believe it or not, was about 78 million pounds. And if you think that York Racecourse has a commission of 4%, which is not bad, but anyway, during the 4 days, every single race at York had a prize money not less than £100,000. And this is another incredible achievement. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely fantastic. York is setting the standard that all the others need to try and follow. And of course, the world pool makes a huge difference. I can't say that we totally understand it or know exactly how much money it's raising or how much of that is filtering through to prize money in Britain, but it's certainly the way forward.
Oh yes, but now the Whirlpool had phenomenal results at Goodwood during the royal meeting. So now is a new way of financing race courses, and then these race courses they invest a lot of money in prize money. But now I read in the Racing Post this morning when I was at the airport in London that the race courses they have to show their own balance sheet, their own profit. They have to show what sort of money they invest in the business. Otherwise, people member of a certain association will not declare their horses to run anymore. Have you seen that?
Yes, I know quite a lot about it. Obviously, this is you're referring to the Professional Racing Association, the brainchild of Peter Saville, who I have trained for a long, long time and know very well indeed. And I have been associated with Peter's project almost from the beginning. So I've been to a few of the meetings when he was raising support from trainers. And it appears to be a way forward. I don't think it's as simple to say that people won't declare at racecourses if they don't show all their revenue. What he's looking for is racecourses to contribute 33% of their gross racing revenue to prize money. The long-term theory being that we should all be working in the same way, that as things stand at the moment, certainly we seem to be on different sides of the fence, and Peter would like to see a situation where we all know that if the horsemen, the trainers and the owners and so on work towards increasing race courses income, that we will then in turn benefit from it. At the moment, we seem to be working at cross purposes, and Peter would like to bring us all together with this single aim in mind to increase racing revenue because we all share in that.
Okay, now if you don't mind, we have a little break. Don't go away, stay with us. By the way, you train by our sponsor, Miss Kirstin Rousing, since a long time, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, absolutely. I've just come back from Goodwood today, where we had a filly run for Kirstin. We've been, I can't remember how long, but it must be 20 years or more that we've trained for Kirstin. She's a fantastic owner to work with. A great attitude towards the breeding is what's important for her. She races to breed, as many of the top owners do, but Kirstin has a particularly good attitude towards running her horses. It's amazing that an owner can win the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe and still get a thrill from a small winner at a small track just a few days later, which is what's wonderful about her. For her, small fish are sweet.
Anyway, now I want to touch a subject which is for me is very, very important, because during this program I had the chance of interviewing Michael Fitzsimmons. Michael Fitzsimmons is the boss of betting in Hong Kong. He's in charge for horse racing and for sports betting. But he says something which for me is very, very important. He say the most important thing to increase the betting volume, to have a sound industry, is the integrity of racing. In my opinion, at the moment in England, this integrity of racing is not very good. The first person I interviewed for this program was Nick Rast, that used to be chief executive officer of the BHA, and he told me that at the time, but even nowadays, all the stakeholders in the BHA, trainers, owners, jockeys, breeders, race courses, bookmakers, they have a veto. So it's very difficult to do something. A veto like the United Nations, the Security Council, or Europe, and then just one person say no and nothing happened. For instance, we have a problem. You have a problem in the UK with the anti-doping for jockeys, for instance. In the past, the van for testing the jockeys used to arrive at the tracks in the middle of the afternoon. Now they send the van early morning. So, people see the van and they call the jockeys. Recently, we had several jockeys not showing up, saying we were stuck in the traffic, we had hemorrhoids, disaster. So, this is a point which is very important, I think, also for the public. For the public, what do you think?
Well, I'm very surprised to hear you say that you think the integrity of racing in Britain is not very good.
I didn't say that it's not very good. It could be much better.
Well, I'm not sure. I feel that there's a problem with the perception about the integrity, and that dates back centuries, perhaps, to maybe when things were very dubious in racing. There's no doubt I think even the word doping was always associated with horse racing in particular. That's where the word comes from. But the idea that it's in any way widespread now, I think, is just nonsense. And I think we're probably one of the cleanest sports, particularly when you consider the type of drugs that are basically in horse racing. We cannot use anything that may affect the performance of the animal, and this is certainly not the case in other sports. And yet, I think the public perception is that things are not particularly good in racing, and in other areas of integrity as well. And I actually think you say Nick Rust said about the veto. I think that structure of the BHA has been changed now. But even so, I actually would lay a lot of blame for the reputation that racing has got with the authorities, with the BHA, both from a point of view of drug use and from the point of view of just the daily integrity of how races are run. There seemed to me to be a perception amongst the public and right up to high levels in the BHA that we're all cheating and it's their job to catch us. And I think they do nothing but perpetuate this unfortunate poor image that racing has got, which I think is very undeserved.
Yes, but for instance, if you think of the United States, the Thoroughbred Daily News, which is the TDN, commonly known as the TDN, I think that every Wednesday or every Thursday, they publish what happened in racing, if a trainer has been fined, a jockey has been fined. So, I mean, the public knows. In the UK, nobody knows anything. For the last 3 years, not a single horse has been caught up. I didn't know that because I sent a letter, just a message to one of the guys working for the Racing Post. And they say, why you don't do the same like the TDN? And they say, log in to the BHA website. But this is not good because the man in the street or the people going racing or going to the betting shop, they don't log into the BHA website. They should know what's going on. What is your opinion about this?
No, I see text messages. I don't know why I particularly get them about all BHA inquiries. They're in comparison to the United States is not a fair comparison, where there is a consider far more drug use in horse racing in the United States than in the UK. That the reason you don't see much of it, and there's no point in publishing a table like in TDN, is because there are so few cases of positive tests. And this is not because they're not testing. This is because the horses are not testing positive. And when they do, it's very much in the public domain. If you don't pick up on it, there's other people in the media do. And whenever there's any question that there was any intention whatsoever to cheat, then I can assure you it hits the headlines.
No, I agree. Of course, in the United States, they have a problem that they run on dirt, so they have a lot of much more injuries, the horses, than in the UK, where mainly you run the horses on turf. So this is probably the reason why in the UK, in the US, there are more cases. But for instance, Hong Kong, I think, is completely doping free. Japan is completely doping free. And for the jockeys in those two jurisdictions, they do a lot, because the jockeys, they are locked in a sort of a hotel the night before. They cannot talk to anybody. In the UK, it seems to me that these jockeys are not tested enough. I don't know if you agree or not, but.
Well, I can't really comment on jockey testing, but obviously we've had very high profile cases of jockeys testing positive in this country. And I'm more concerned with the horses than the jockeys. You say about the van arriving early and everybody knows, but I think they're very, very strict on jockeys who don't turn up on the day that the dope testing is there. So I think we're pretty hard on the riders. I can't comment on other jurisdictions.
No,
but
yes,
that in British racing, I get a bit frustrated when I hear the BHA crying all the time that they lead the field, because I don't necessarily think that they do. And I feel that the BHA, as a few years ago when they started introducing pre-race testing, and they seem to have a bit of an obsession with the idea that people were milkshaking horses, giving bicarbonate to horses to reduce the lactic acid buildup. And I've never ever given bicarbonate of soda to a horse to reduce the lactic acid buildup. Mainly because I don't think it works. That's why I would never have considered it, even when that would not have been deemed illegal in the UK. When I was discussing this influx of testing and pre-race testing, I was discussing it with John O'Connor of Ballylynch, who's also a vet, and he made a great comment to me. He said this was typical of regulators first create a bogeyman and then ask for more money to deal with it. And I feel that there's been, they're chasing around looking for doping that just doesn't exist, that isn't there. And I think they've done more harm to our reputation than good. Interestingly, we had, in racing administration in recent years, we've had two people, Anna Marie Phelps and Julie Harrington, that have come from cycling, perhaps until recently a sport that had an even worse reputation, or maybe the worst reputation for drugs than horse racing. And I put it to both of those people, why was it that when cycling is now believed to have been cleaned up, why was it when they apparently stopped all the drug abuse in cycling, that the times of the cyclists, the performances didn't even blip? There was no drop in the times at all. The riders were just as good as they ever were. My take on this was that either the drugs didn't work. I think that's the most likely case, because I think there's a lot of charlatans and quacks that are selling the idea that doping will make your athlete or your horse run faster when many of the drugs actually won't. So either the drugs didn't work, or the cyclists weren't using as many as they were accused of. Julie Harrington's answer to this was no, that the times hadn't dropped because of marginal gains in other areas. Well, I think that's just unacceptable. I think, as I say, the most likely explanation is if they were using the drugs, they weren't doing for them what they believed they were going to do.
Anyway, going to the fixture, I think that there is a problem concerning the fixture. Probably you said somewhere, if I well remember, there are too many races at the moment in the UK. But the trouble is that the bookmakers, they want more races, the race courses, they want more races. So it's very difficult for the BHA to come to balance this problem. What do you think?
Yeah, certainly it's very difficult for the BHA, because they've got themselves into a position where the racecourses seem to have established that they own the fixtures, and the betting industry are paying based on number of runners and number of races. And they do, as you say, they seem to just want more and more racing. I'm very concerned by this. There's not just too much racing, there's even too much good racing. Very good article by Lee Mottershead a couple of days ago in the Racing Post showing the decline of the Eber, very, very valuable race, and the decline of the Eber with the lowest rated horse dropping quite dramatically in the last 2 or 3 years. And Charlie had a couple of horses that he didn't enter in the Eber because he thought there was, looking at recent years, there was no possibility of them getting in. Maybe that applied to a lot of other trainers and why we had fewer entries this year. But suddenly we had a horse, I think, rated 86 getting in the weights in the Eber. So the most likely explanation for this is far too many of our good middle distance horses are going abroad where Eber accepted. There's generally far more prize money for them. So yes, we've got too much racing. We are gradually driving the standard down. We started this interview tonight talking about greyhound racing, and undoubtedly there's some parallels when you start just putting on betting fodder with no real interest in the races. The dogs have gone from to a point where people don't even really know their names. They just bet on track numbers.
Yes.
And I have to say, yes, I fear racing going the same way.
And another problem that you have is this affordability check, because for people that they want to bet. Because I spent as you know, I spent a lot of time in the UK going racing, talking to people. I know a lot of people. And now, more or less, every punter has an offshore betting account, because they bet offshore. You deposit your money, they don't ask anything, you can do whatever you like. If you lose, they get the money. If you win, they send you the money. But now in England, they check everything. And the last disaster, in my opinion, is what they are doing now for the syndicate. If you want to buy now a share of a horse in a syndicate, you have to show your bank account, you have to show where the money comes from. But you are running syndicate in your stable since a long time. I don't know how many shareholders there are, maybe 10 or 20 or 15 or whatever, or whichever number. But if I buy a share in one of your syndicate, I don't have to give you millions. Maybe that I have to pay 5,000 or something like that. So nowadays they are making things difficult for these things. What do you think is another problem for racing?
Two separate issues. First of all, the affordability checks. I think I'm staggered at the idea that any government could suggest bringing in affordability checks on what people do with their own tax paid money, whether it be betting, whether it be smoking, drinking, going to the cinema. I don't think the government
Sorry if
has a
I
right.
interrupt you, or investing in the stock exchange market and they don't check anything.
Absolutely, or doing the lottery.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so it is, to me, it is absolutely staggering that they could propose that, and I am 100% against it. So, no doubt there. I am 100% against the idea of affordability checks. But at the same time, I was a bit unhappy that that most of the arguments against affordability checks seem to be coming from racing professionals rather than from the betting industry. The betting industry were very surprisingly quiet about it, and I think I was not one of the trainers who went on the front page of the Racing Post or on racing TV and screamed about affordability checks. I don't think it's principally our argument. I think it's the betting industry's argument. And I think with that we did our reputation with government a lot of harm by the emphasis we put on affordability checks being a racing issue, as if racing, so many of the public and so many people in government think of racing not as a sport, purely as a betting medium. And I think we did ourselves harm by portraying ourselves in that way. Onto the syndicates and the idea that people have to disclose their income and so on for joining syndicates. We haven't encountered that yet. As I understand it, this is a rule from Weatherby's Bank rather than it's not part of the rules of racing that you have to disclose anything about your income to join a partnership or a syndicate. But Weatherby's Bank are making it a rule of opening a bank account, which in turn is required, I think, if you have more than 10% of a horse. And so this could be a problem, but we haven't encountered it yet, and
Yes.
I believe that the blame can be laid at the door of the BHA.
Anyway, I have the final question because a friend of mine asked me to ask you a question. Because your horses, when you used to train horses, your horses were well known. Most of the time, they were front runners. Is that correct? So he's saying, can you ask Mark Johnston if also his dogs were front runners or not?
Right. Well, absolutely. That the dogs and the horses were in the same situation then, in that obviously a dog you can't actually manipulate whether it's going to be a front runner or not. But I was really surprised at York. I can't think what race it was before, but that William Haggis said to me, "Is yours going to make the running?" Well, I was shocked that William would think that I could know that, because I can honestly say in those 5,000 winners and 25,000 or whatever it was runners, I never told a jockey to make the running. That
Really?
Absolutely, because I think I can't believe that. I know a lot of trainers do, but I just cannot understand it. How can you tell a jockey where he's going to sit in the field when you don't know how fast the others are going to go? So I cannot understand the logic of telling a jockey where to sit in the field relative to the other horses. So my instructions to my jockeys have always been to, well, not always, because sometimes you have the very occasional horse that needs something to aim at, and so has to have another horse in front of it to have something to aim at, because it won't go out and set the pace. But those are the exceptions, and our general instruction is to allow the horse to settle wherever it is happy. So the answer as to why we had so many front runners is, in the average field of 10 runners, there are 9 that have been told to get a lead, and ours that hasn't been told anything, and so it finds itself in front.
Thank you very much. This is a very good you explain extremely well this point. Thank you very much for having been with us. And I heard that you are ready to go to Baden-Baden. Good shopping there. And thank you very much for your time. Bye.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure.